Next theory. Now we're getting into those were the two young Earth creationist theories. The idea that even though some in modern science would say that the Earth is really old, if you're going to believe the Bible, it's actually young. Remember, young Earth, sixth day would say because of the flood. Appearance of age would say God made it to look old, even though it's not. These next two theories say actually we should interpret Genesis 1 with the understanding that the Earth is billions of years old. So any scientific discovery that tells us that the Earth has been around for that long, we can interpret Genesis 1 and hold that scientific finding to also be true. We don't have to separate them. So the first one, and if you grew up in the church, this is probably another one that you're familiar with, is this idea of Day-Age Old Earth Creationism. So what do they believe? So we're talking about these days, these 6 days, and people in this camp would say, yeah, the days of Genesis 1 are not literal 24-hour days. In the other two theories, they were literal 24-hour days. You could go back, start a clock, beep, evening and morning, evening and morning, evening and morning, literal 24-hour days. With this theory, no. A day in Genesis 1 is actually a period of indefinite length, so that neither the age of the earth nor the duration of any particular period in creation history can be determined from the Bible. So when it says day, could have been a day, could have been 1,000 years, could have been a million years, could have been a billion years, because the word day is not being used to mean like calendar day, it's being used to mean something else. Where does that come from? Well, the basis for this view is that the Hebrew word yom for day can also mean an indefinite period of time. And the thing is that this is true for English also. So, for example, if you've ever heard an older person say something like, back in my day, kids weren't so connected to their phones, is that person talking about literally a day in time that was 24 hours long? No, when someone says back in my day, they're talking about like their season of life or an era of time. And so Hebrew can do the same thing. Um, Major kinds of plants and animals were created separately over eons of Earth's history, and the fossil record shows reliably which came earlier and which came later. So they would say that for the most part, and here we're going to click all the way back here, when we're looking at this framework, day one, light and dark, sure, but that day one could have lasted billions of years. Day two, separating the waters from the waters, that day could have lasted billions of years. Day three, land and plants. There's another perhaps billion years where it's just land and plants. Day four, sun, moon, stars, astronomical things. Give it another billion years where those things are being created. Day five, birds and fish and things that swim and things that fly. Give it another million years, whatever the case is, because each day is not a literal 24-hour day. It's a span of time, however long that span of time needs to be to accommodate modern scientific findings about these things being created. All right, sorry, clicking back here. Um, sometimes it's also called progressive creationism. And this has been a pretty popular theory among Christians for recent history. Here's some arguments for it. Okay. It allows for the commonly accepted scientific understanding of the age of the earth. So when Christians talk about like conflicts between Christianity and science, and they're specifically thinking about Genesis, usually it's in a couple of different camps. One of them is this idea of the age of the earth. Is the earth young or old? And that kind of gets to the Big Bang, right? If you've ever heard Christians talk about the Big Bang, they usually do so with a little bit of disdain, which is funny because actually before the Big Bang Theory, the prevailing like non-Christian scientific notion was that the Earth itself, the material itself, was like eternal, the eternity of matter, and that things just always had been. And so it was actually a Belgian Catholic who came up with this idea that like, no, there was a time before the universe as we know it now existed. And if anything, like it brought that kind of creation, right? God speaking and things coming into being. Um, I think it lines up more with the Bible than people today often talk about it, but that's neither here nor there. So Big Bang, age of the Earth. But you also see people, in conflict over things like evolution, specifically evolution of humanity. And so this perspective, day age old Earth creationism, allows for the age of the Earth to be billions of years old while still allowing for this progressive creation. So you don't need to agree with evolutionary theory, but you can agree with the fact that the Earth is billions of years old. Like we said, it works with the Hebrew word yom, and it kind of seems to work with the way the days are laid out. And it gives an opportunity for the fossil record to remain unchallenged, like we said, as well as this special creation of humanity in God's image, not having to have evolutionary theory be the connecting link. A lot of things for it. Arguments against it. Well, as much as the Bible also says, like, for the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day, like, that's true. God's time is different than our time. In Genesis, it does seem to suggest, and there was evening and there was morning for each of these days. And so to take the Hebrew word yom and have it mean something other than a 24-hour day, okay, but then what do you do with the evening and the morning? That's a challenge. That's a challenge for this view. Also, as much as it wants to line up with the fossil record, it just doesn't quite, because if you look at how modern evolutionary science suggests some of these animals came to be, layers of the earth, again, I'm not a scientist, but there's this idea that there were like land animals alive before like whales. And so are whales then not part of the day five era? Or is there like mixing of eras? It's not a one-to-one. It's not a perfect lineup. And so that's also a challenge with this particular view. Again, if you have any others, link them in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts. Okay, here's a summary. Day, age, old Earth. God created everything progressively over the course of billions of years, or however long. What do we do with the dinosaurs? They existed. They existed a long time before humans, just like the fossil record shows. So another challenge with this one is what do you do with the fall? You have to allow for human or you have to allow for animal death before the fall, whereas young Earth creationism, both 6-day young Earth creationism and apparent age young Earth creationism, can say that there was no animal death before the fall. This one you have to allow for animal death before the fall, which again I don't find to be a particular interpretive challenge, but that might be a weakness in this view if you feel strongly about that.